In the big series, yes, okay. Another part within the series. Okay, so we've been going over tough questions. Here's the review. We started with, does God exist? And so I gave you some answers to why God. Next one, what kind of God is he? If God does exist, what kind of God is he? So we went over different religions. So we went over white Christianity specifically. Then we went over, is the Bible trustworthy? Okay, and we gave several reasons why the Bible is quite trustworthy. Last series we just had is Jesus really the Messiah? Did Jesus really die on the cross? Did he resurrect on the cross? Did he fulfill the prophecies? That's what we talked about. Next one is this is like new section, is why suffering? Okay, why does God allow bad things to happen? I'll read this. It is not science that has led me to doubt the purpose of God. It is the state of this world. It is this pitiless, unending struggle for existence among the nations. It is the collapse of our idealisms. There is a radical twist in the very constitution of this universe, which will always defeat man's hope, make havoc of his dreams, and bring this pathetic optimism crashing in disaster. Purpose? Look at the world. That settles it for me. So he's basically saying, I know there's people out there who says, oh, because of science, I can't believe in God. There's evolution. How can you believe that God created the world and these kind of things? Or I can't trust the Bible. But this person says it's none of those things. It's actually whenever I see suffering. Okay, whenever I expect something good to happen, it always fails me. Life always fails me. And so therefore, what's the point of this? I can't believe there is a God. Long time ago, a Greek philosopher said something quite similar, and this was his argument. Maybe God wants to get rid of evil. He wants to, but maybe he cannot. Okay, he wants to, he cannot. That means he's impotent. He's not powerful. Okay, so he's not omnipotent. If you guys are writing the notes, it's right there. Okay, so maybe God wants to get rid of evil, but he cannot. So that means he is not all powerful. Number two, maybe God can. Okay, he can get rid of all of the evil and suffering, but he doesn't want to. Then what's the problem? Then the conclusion is that he's a wicked God. He's not a very loving God. Okay, he can, but he doesn't want to. Okay, next one. So his argument is, if he's talking to the Christians, God both can, he has the power to, and he wants to. So why is there evil in this world? Why is there suffering in this world? Okay, so that's the argument. He's basically saying, why does an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving God allow pain and suffering? All right. I'm going to give you guys one more example. Anybody know who Stephen Fry is? Any of you guys? Okay, that's fine. He's a British actor. Probably the movie. I don't know if you guys watch Sherlock Holmes. Not the show, but the movie. He was in there. Anyways, so he's a pretty outspoken atheist, and he had an interview with another person, and the person who is interviewing him says, suppose everything is true. Suppose there is God. You're wrong, basically. Suppose you're wrong, and it's true. You walk up to the pearly gate, and you are confronted by God. Okay, because you're an atheist. So he says, what if there is God? You die and you go to heaven. What would Stephen Fry say to him, her, or it? Okay, what would you say to God? Stephen Fry says, it's known as theodicy. I'll say bone cancer in children. What's that about? How dare you? How dare you create a world where there is such misery that is not our fault? It's not right. It's utterly, utterly evil. Why should I respect the capricious meaning like go back and forth, kind of like, you did this and then you did this, mean-minded, stupid God who creates a world that is so full of injustice and pain? That's what I would say. Okay? So the interviewer he jokes with him and he says, oh, then you think you're going to get into heaven? Okay, if you say that to God, you think God's going to let you go into heaven? He jokes around. And Stephen Fry says, oh, but I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to get on his turn. They're wrong. Now, if I died and it was Pluto, Hades, the 12 Greek gods, then I would have more truck with it because the Greeks didn't pretend not to be human in their appetites and in their capriciousness and in their unreasonableness. They didn't present themselves as being all-seeing, all-wise, all-kind, all-magnificent because the God who created this world, if it was created by God, is quite clearly a maniac, utter maniac, totally selfish. So he's basically saying, let's say I went to heaven and there's the Greek gods. Then I'll be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because the Greek gods, they never said, I'm a loving God. None of the Greek gods says we're all powerful. Never said that. Okay? So they would say, oh, they created this world and that's why it's a mess down here too. Okay? But he's talking specifically to Christians. He says, hey, you says you're all seeing, all wise, all kind, all good, then why is there evil in this world? That's what he would say to them. So he's saying, whoever created this world, crazy, utter maniac, totally selfish. He continues on. We have to spend our life on our knees thanking him. Okay, we have to worship. He says, come worship him and stuff like that. What kind of God would do that? Yes, the world is a very splendid place, but it also has insects whose whole life cycle is to burrow into the eyes of children and make them blind. They eat outwards from the eyes. Why did you do that? Why? Why did you do that to us? You could have easily made a creation where that didn't exist. It's simply not acceptable. Okay? So again, the same question, which is, you're all this loving, all-powerful God. Why create this kind of world? It's stupid. So atheism is not just about not believing there is God, but an assumption there is one. What kind of God is he? It's perfectly apparent, if God does exist, he is monstrous, utterly monstrous, and deserves no respect whatsoever. The moment you banish him from your life, becomes simpler, purer, cleaner, worth living, in my opinion. So a lot of newer atheism, that is what they say. They don't just reject God. They say, no, you need to banish God. We need to get rid of God out of our society altogether. Because of religion, because of God, because of religious people, the society is at a worse place. So again, why does an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving God allow pain and suffering? I'm going to give you guys some time to discuss, process some of this. So go for it with people next to you guys. Lydia, sorry, can you take Kurumi to Grace?
What's your answer? I usually just listening, not thinking about it. When I was writing, I was following the lyrics. And what was he talking about that? He wanted to take his best in the style He's giving us second chance, third chance,
Well, you see, here's the thing: is how you want to
We might
interpret the
decipher
God.
down like some of the commonly said like
On one
Bible
hand,
verses and see if it was actually true.
It's valid. On the other hand,
Another
it's
was
like
God only
saying,
allows suffering that
does a
you can
parent
handle.
let the
And
child
then
do
you
whatever
said
they
it
want?
wasn't biblical, but I forgot why.
Yeah, it's like a parent, like
왜 아니에요?
노트 한 번 더
if a
해야겠다.
parent loves a child,
맞아, 그건 노트 안 했어.
does a parent control the child?
It's not suffering, it's temptation.
Oh, okay, yeah.
God didn't bring the sin to us. We are the ones who.
So can someone love someone but still not keep
And
them
we
in
are asking
trouble?
like, you have the power to fix it right away.
So that would be
Just
nice.
because you don't know what God
Don't you see the
is.
like
Those atheists, if they fix it right away, I just say, if God fixes everything,
result
then
in
if God, that means he needs to take our free will.
Did your dad say one time?
Then
like,
we
you
have
have
to
to-
why did he take our free will? We want to have a free will.
and then you know you're
So
responsible.
the freedom, the
No,
free
it's
will,
responsible.
and everything else.
Yeah, yeah, why do that? Yeah, that's a good one.
That's what I.
Lizzie, thank you. Thank you, thank you.
I think it's actually really important. This is a big important question. This is one of my big questions. This is one of my big questions. I've always thought. I actually read a book. I think it was like a Christian book called "Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People." There's actually a book.
I know, it's not a Christian book.
Oh, it's not a Christian book. Okay. I read it like 20 years ago. I guess that's you know the book.
It's by a Jewish
is it?
rabbi.
Oh, okay. I see.
But I think he wrote that book after like his son died or something.
I think something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna take a couple of weeks to answer this question. Let me say a couple of things. So since the question in itself, this is a very complex question. But I'm speaking to specifically to Christians. I think as Christians, it's really easy to try to give like simplistic answer. So just say like, I know a lot of Christians who just say, oh, it's just God's will. Oh, you just need to believe it. Oh, you just need to pray about it. Well, those things can be true, but that's very simplistic. Okay, especially to people who are like suffering and asking these questions. It's most of the time it's very emotional question. Like even for Stephen Fry, if you actually look at his language, he's not very being objective. He's very emotional in things that he's saying. And so we have to understand that this question, we have to first understand this is a very emotional question first. But we're going to deal with it more objectively first, okay? All right, so how do we answer this question? Even before we get there, we have to defang this question a little bit. And I'll explain what I mean by defanging, because this is a very powerful question, but it's not as powerful as a lot of people think. Okay, we're going to first go over the world religions, and we're going to actually see what different worldviews and world religions, what they have to actually say about suffering. How do they answer these questions then? Okay, because if we first understand that, then we're going to understand this question much better. So hopefully this is kind of a review for some of you guys, because we went over the different world religions. All right, so let's try our best. In Hinduism, so let's say I'm a Hindu and you go to a Hindu priest and I'm suffering so much. What would they say? What's the reason why you are suffering? Well, what's the reason why bad things are happening to you?
Your life before.
Okay, good. Okay, so what? What about my past life?
You're not good.
Okay, I was not good in my past life, so now I am suffering for it now. Okay? Okay, so they would say karma. So if you guys, this is an idea of karma. So you kick somebody and then, hey, someone's going to come and get you too. Okay, another, do you guys see how this is karma? Yeah? Okay, so here and this karma. Okay, so they would say to Stephen Fry, okay, they would say, hey, those kids, yeah, cancer and bugs and stuff like that, but that kid what? That kid deserved it. Because they did something bad in the past life. Does that make sense? Okay, that's what they would say. Okay, how about Buddhism? Why is there suffering? Remember, if you remember Buddhism, their whole religion revolves around the idea of suffering. So what would they say, according to Buddhists, what's the reason that you suffer?
Isn't it similar? Yeah.
Not similar.
You're too attached.
Attachment. You have too much attachment. You have, because they believe that all attachments, it's a bad thing. So you have to detach.
But they also believe that if you did bad thing in your past life, you're not gonna reborn as a human. You're gonna
Right,
reborn as
right.
like an animal, and
Right,
they believe
right.
that too.
Yeah. They do believe it, but it's more, rather than good things or bad things, it's more
I
attachments.
don't understand, Pastor,
Huh.
how attachment has anything to do with
I'll explain. Okay, good. Okay, so attachments. So for example, this picture will perfectly explain how attachment brings us suffering.
She's too attached to him.
Okay? So these are just babies, but okay? So why is she upset?
Because of these.
Because she likes him, but he so she has an emotional attachment, love, called love. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but in Buddhism, it's a bad thing. Okay? Any kind of attachment, because if you love somebody, you're going to get hurt. You're going to suffer. Okay? I'll give you some more examples. Okay? Because babies always think bigger is better, right?
not necessarily.
Okay? But look, he has ice cream right there. But because he's attached to this, he's like, oh, I have nothing. What happens to him? He suffers. Okay? This is another example. It's like, oh, that person has more followers than me, or more clicks than I do. What are you? Okay? Oh, she's just like,
She's like,
let me creep on you.
yeah, what are you looking at?
Okay.
That ain't even there.
So if you guys remember, that's why the monks, what do? They shave their head, and then they go to like forest. Why? Because if everybody has shaved head, everybody's wearing the same thing, then you're not going to be like, oh, Kevin, your suit is so much better than, you know what I mean? Oh, your hair is, nobody has hair. Okay? Why do you go to the temple? Because there's there's just forest, there's no cars, no houses there. Everybody has the same thing. Okay? And what's the reason why they like do really, really harsh disciplines? It's so that they can control their mind, control their body, so that they could detach faster. The more you can control your mind, the more you can detach easily. Okay? So again, Buddhists, they believe, hey, you need to detach. It's because of all your attachments. I'll give you an example of this. I was actually listening to an interview of a monk who is a woman, but she's like pretty high up there. And then the person who asked her was, what's like one of the what's a struggle for you? Because I know you know your whole goal of Buddhism is to detach. What's one of the hardest thing? And she said, I actually have a son. Okay, so I don't know like when she had a son, maybe before becoming monk. I don't know, but she basically said for me to detach myself from him, you know, to not love him basically. That was the hardest thing.
Do they love everything in life?
I mean, they do, right? I mean, it's not human not to be attached, but they believe that you need to detach from all of those things. Why? Because it leads to attachment, or it leads to suffering. Yeah. And if you remember, we want to be free from the humanness. We want to become God, because we are all God, according to Buddhists. Okay, so that's next. All right, New Age. Okay, New Age.
We didn't go over it before.
Yeah, we didn't go over New Age, so this one is going to be new for you. But if you read a lot of the newer self-help books and these kind of things, they're going to say suffering is just an illusion. Okay, so illusion. It's fake. It's not there. It's just in your mind. Okay? Okay, so you need to train your mind to think positive things instead. Positive, and then the negative, it'll just fade away. Okay? So for example, one person says, life is an illusion. I am held together in the nothingness by art. Okay, it makes zero sense, but... Okay, how can you be held together in nothingness? Okay, I'll give you an example of this. Shankara, Hindu worldview, so he says everything is an illusion, even your sense of self is an illusion. Okay, so one day, he was chased by an elephant, and he ran up a tree. Shankara, this guy, he believes, again, he says everything is an illusion, okay? But he was running up a tree because there was an elephant. And somebody asked him, why did you run? You said everything is an illusion. The elephant is an illusion. Why did you run up a tree? He said, well, that was an illusionary elephant, and my run was an illusion, and I climbed an illusionary tree. Okay? So again, it doesn't make sense, but that's what they believe. All right. So again, Hinduism says it's your fault. Buddhism also says you're your fault. New Age says it doesn't exist. Okay? You have to believe that it's your fault. Okay. Islam. I know this we didn't talk about it specifically about suffering, but any guesses on Islam?
Fully submit to Allah.
Okay, you're not submitting to Allah. Okay? So they basically say it's Allah's will. Basically, it's God's will. God decides if he wants suffering, there's suffering. God can do whatever he wants. Or it could be disobedience, or it could also be a test. So kind of similar to, some Christians will actually say the same thing, very similar thing. Okay? Okay, but the problem within Islam is, okay, do you remember the whole idea of Islam? What does the word Islam mean? Do you guys remember what the word Islam means? It means to surrender. The whole point is surrender. So if bad things happen in your life, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to come to God and be like, God, why did you do this? Why did you do? No, what are you supposed to do? Submit, surrender. Okay, so real freedom is submission to Allah. Okay, let's look at another, I know this is not a religion, but another worldview, a popular worldview, which is atheism. There is no God. So what would they believe? Why is there suffering? Why is there bad thing in this world? What's the reason for it? There's no reason. Okay, there's no meaning. There's no purpose. It's just random. Just bad luck. Okay, and bad genes, bad DNA, bad evolution. Okay, so you're
Selection.
not very good, not very good selection. Yeah. So it's no purpose. There's no purpose behind it. Okay? No meaning, no purpose. It's just random, badly evolved. Okay, bad evolution, bad genes, bad DNA from your parents and from your parents' parents' parents. I'll give you a couple of examples of this. Richard Dawkins, he's a famous atheist. This is what he says in his book, River Out of Eden. The total amount of suffering per year in the natural world is beyond all decent contemplation. In a universe of blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are just going to get hurt. Other people are just going to get lucky, and you won't find any rhythm or reason to it, nor any justice. The universe that we observe has precisely the properties that we should expect if they're at bottom: no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. So he's basically saying the same thing, which is, hey, some people are just going to get lucky and some people are just going to get hurt. There's no meaning behind it. There's no purpose behind it. The question of why is a universal delusion. He says that's a delusion. You shouldn't ask questions. Why cancer? Why earthquake? Why hurricane? Why COVID? Why all of this? It's useless questions. God doesn't exist. Who are you asking the question? Does that make sense? That's what he's saying. We ask because we cannot admit that things might be neither good nor evil, neither cruel nor simple, but simply callous indifference to all suffering, lacking purpose. Okay, there's no good, there's no bad, there's no evil. This is just nature. It happens. Okay, for example, when like a lion eats a lamb, do we go, oh, that's evil? No, that's just part of nature. Okay, just that you're born weak. And so stronger eats the weak. That's it. And that's what he is basically saying. So he's saying, as an atheist, we should not be asking questions, why? Why suffering? Why pain? Does that make sense? I'll give you another example. For nature, he's a poet now. For nature, heartless, witless nature will neither care nor know. DNA neither knows or care. DNA just is, and we dance to its music. So basically, he's saying, in a poetic way, our DNAs, we're just born like that. If you're sick, if you have disability, if you have some bad thing, sorry, that's what you're born with, and we just dance to it. Okay? All right. Now, this is very, very important, the next part that we're getting into. Okay. Who asked the question of suffering? Okay, what I mean by question of suffering is this one. Our original question: why does an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving God allow pain and suffering? Okay. So this question in itself, okay, Are Hindus asking this question? Do they say, God, you're all powerful, all knowing, all loving. Why do you let all these bad things happen to me? Are Hindus asking that question? No. Why? Because they're gods, number one. And number two, it's your fault. Okay? So you don't need to ask anybody, oh, why is there suffering? Because you know, because your religion tells you, which is you messed up. So if you got cancer, you messed up. So now you pay for it. Something bad happens to you, you messed up. So they're not asking this question. Does that make sense? So in this worldview, it doesn't work. Okay, how about in Buddhism? Are they asking this question? God, why? No, they're not, right? Because, again, it's their fault. What do they need to do?
Detach.
They need to detach. So they don't need to blame anybody else. I don't need to blame my parents, or I need to do something. How about New Age? Same thing, right? There's no God. It's an illusion anyways. How about in Islam? Why God? Okay, they can because they do believe in an all-powerful, all-knowing God. So they can, but do they? Do they allow that in their religion? They do not. Why? Because you need to submit. You need to submit. Does that make sense? All right. How about atheist? Atheism. Are they asking this question? Why God? Well, who are you talking to? You don't believe in God. Who are you talking to? Okay? If you don't believe in God, why are you asking God a question? Okay? So atheists, yes, of course, many atheists ask the question, but they borrow from another worldview and then ask the question. They cannot ask from within their worldview. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So the only ones who can actually ask this question and actually answer this question is Christianity. Okay? So again, you have to understand, I'm not saying Christianity is better. So only Christians can answer that. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying, oh, Buddhism sucks, so they can't answer that. What I'm saying is, this question in itself, why does God, an all-powerful God, all-knowing, all-loving God, these all come from the Christian worldview. You cannot find this kind of God anywhere else. Only within the Judeo-Christian worldview. Does that make sense? So, this is very important. Therefore, if you want to ask this question, you have to get the answer from where? From Christianity, which is the Bible. Does that make sense? But most of the people that I talk to, they go, why does God do this? And I try, okay, let's read the Bible together and let's try to get answers. What do? They go, I don't believe in that. But, I don't want to answer from that. They're not going to give me a good answer. I don't like the answer. That's fine. That's fine. If you don't want, then you cannot ask that question either. Because your concept of God, that why all powerful, comes from the Bible. So if you don't want to get the answer from the Bible, then that's fine. Then don't ask the question. Does that make sense? So the question in itself is a Christian question. So therefore, we have to get their answer from the Bible itself as well. Very, very important. And so therefore, like some of the things he says, like for example, he says, Stephen Fry says, how dare you create a world where there is such misery that is not our fault? Right? He's saying what? He's saying you created a flawed world, and then it's not our fault that there is pain and suffering in this world. Is that biblical? Absolutely not. That's not biblical. God didn't create this kind of world. He created a perfect world according to the Bible. Now, if Stephen Fry says, no, that's gibberish, that's stupid, that's fine. But, again,
Don't ask the question.
Again, you have to understand where the question comes from. Okay, that's what. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, that's very important, because once you say that, then it defangs the question, because this is a very harsh question and it's very critical to Christians. But they have to also understand, hey, if you want to get the answers, you have to also search the Bible as well. So that's very, very, very important. Okay, I'm gonna say the same thing. I'm just gonna give you more examples of this. Okay. This might be a little complicated in the beginning, but I'll explain it for you. Okay. Ravi Zacharias, he's a very famous Christian apologist. He says this, when you say there's too much evil in this world, you assume that there is good. When you assume that there is good, you assume that there's a difference, there's a thing as a moral law on the basis of which to differentiate between good and evil. But if you assume a moral law, you must posit a moral lawgiver. But that's who you're trying to disprove and not prove. Because if there is no moral lawgiver, there is no moral law. If there's no moral law, there's no good. If there's no good, then there is no evil. Then what is your question? Okay, so he basically just said the same thing, but in a more complicated and like it sounds really smart. So he's basically saying this. He's saying, why is there evil in this world? So he says, oh, okay, you know what evil is? Then that means you know that there is good in this world too. You understand the difference between good and evil. Okay, good. So if you assume that you understand the difference between good and evil, that means you believe in objective moral law. You believe that there is an ultimate good and ultimate bad. For example, if somebody just came and took my baby and killed my baby or something like that, nobody would say, oh, that's a good thing. Okay, people would say, no, that's an evil thing. Okay, so that's an objective moral law. Another example is like when you're playing basketball and someone says foul, then what are you saying? You're saying there's a good play and there's a bad play. So there must be a rule book to tell you what's a good play and what's a bad play. Okay, so that's an objective moral law. But if there's an objective moral law, there must be some kind of a giver, somebody who wrote that law. Okay, this is a classic moral law argument. We went over this. Okay? But he's saying, okay, you said there is no God because there is evil. You said there is no evil, so there is no God. Okay? But if there is no God in this universe, then there is no objective moral law. And if there's no objective moral law, then how can you tell the difference between good and evil? And if you cannot tell the difference between good and evil, then what is your question? Your question, you have to posit a God in there. That's what it's saying. Okay? So again, you have to believe, if you want to ask this question, why does God, you have to believe there is God. There is a good God. There is an all-powerful, all-loving God, if you want to ask this question. I'll give you one more example. Any of you guys watch this House? Yeah. Very realistic. This is how doctors are, right? No? Okay. Your hospital is just like this, no?
Jason.
Yeah, this is Jason, right? Okay. There's a scene where basically House is he's basically like an atheist. He doesn't believe there's higher power and things like that. There was one episode where a nun is very, very sick. Okay, and she's about to die. And they're going back and forth to why do you still believe in God and things like that? Aren't you bitter towards God? You believe in this God, but look, this God has let you down, things like that, okay? And this is what the nun says. I was angry, but I realized something. You can't be angry at God and not believe him at the same time.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Who you angry at? So if you're angry towards God, then you must believe that God also exists as well.
Because that's what usually happens.
Right. So again, if you don't believe in God, why are you so angry? Yeah. Just go with Richard Dawkins' view. You don't have to ask the question at all. Yeah. That question in itself is a delusion. Any questions or clarifications so far? Okay, let me do one more. If you look at the end of, this is Stephen Fry's interview. Okay, if you looked at towards the end, this is what a lot of atheists say nowadays, which is basically the moment you banish God out of your life, get rid of religion, God, all this stuff, your life becomes simpler, purer, cleaner, more worth living, in my opinion. So there's quite a bit of more newer atheists that says we need to get rid of religion altogether. They don't even say tolerate it. We need to get rid of it. Okay, but this is problematic. Okay, so here's an example of this. This is a dialogue between Richard Dawkins and Ravi Zacharias. It's not a real dialogue, but it's kind of like a suppose. Okay, so Richard Dawkins says, Ravi Zacharias says, what's your view on God? Dawkins says, I believe that God is a maniac, but he's a fictional character. Question, what do you think of humanity? there's goodness of humanity without God watching over. So that's what Stephen Fry said too. It's like, hey, without God, we can still be good. Without God, it'll be simpler, purer, better. Does that make sense? Okay. So on God, if God does exist, he's crazy. But humans, we're good. We can get together. We can do great things together. Okay. Okay. So he explains this. He says, now, I don't know if he's confused or I am. If God doesn't exist and all the descriptions apply, who did these things? Like, who did all of these bad things? Humanity. Humans, like, look at 90% of, not all bad things that happen is caused by humans. Okay, like natural disasters and, it could be. It could be. Okay, anyways, but like directly, I'm talking about directly, but a lot of the pain and suffering that we bring on this world is caused by humans. Okay, so he's saying, if God is not the one who's doing all of this stuff, then who is causing all this? Humans. Who wrote the Old Testament? Who wrote the Old Testament if God didn't? Humans. So that means humans did all of this stuff. That's his answer. Who ordered all these things to happen? Human. Okay, so why on earth are you so big on humans and so small on God when humans manufacture the God that you deny? Okay, he's basically saying, humans, you're always doing negative things. Okay, why are you so big on humans? And also, if God doesn't exist, humans created this God. Okay, so what does that tell you about humans then? Does that make sense? So if we as humans created this evil God, Christian God, then whoever made them are humans too, so they're evil as well. That's what he's basically trying to get at. All right. I know that was a lot of information, and my throat hurts. Okay, so now I'm going to give you guys time to dialogue, kind of like rewind all of this and everything else. By the way, so this is just the beginning. This is just like the layer. Okay, now we're going to go deep. We're going to go into the Bible and actually talk about what does the Bible say? Why is there suffering? Why is there pain? And I think, again, it might be not 100% satisfactory, but I do think it does give us some answers to these things. Okay, and that's what we're going to. All right, so talk about this with the people next to you guys.